just read out a few and then you see which one you want to pick. What do you think of the way the West and their media portrays India and everyday life, and does that hinder our growth? What about a population control law in India? Related to some of the points that you made, there's a bunch of questions about what you think needs to be fixed with the higher education system in India and how is the Indian system different from the American system. So the whole range of questions around that topic from Amarnath, Ashik, Ilahi and others. Related to your stint at RTI, perhaps, again, your call. What are your views on demonetization and is the RTI independent? What do you think of India's growth trajectory since 2014? This is from Manan, and the changes in Indian democracy since 2014 from Ilyas Mir.
Okay, so let's start with how the rest of the world sees India. I think it's a mixed view, right? So on the one hand, they see a huge country, and they see a country which has been a democracy, is a democracy, and they feel an affinity because they don't feel that kind of affinity with, say, China, which they see as much more authoritarian and a very different system. They sympathize with the Indian system. However, I think this is where, when India does things which seem to be weakening its own democracy, they do opine on it. And we can continuously dismiss that criticism as bias, but when every major newspaper outside, whether it's the Financial Times, the Economist, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Daily Mail, all of them have a similar viewpoint, maybe we should stop and say, okay, what is it that we're doing wrong that we need to listen to? So again, I think it's, we have sometimes a very, very irritable view towards foreign advice. My own sense is we should listen to the advice in a mature way, okay? They have this, let's listen to it, and then decide whether we want to take it or not. Continuously dismissing it as some sort of colonial view and their colonial past, etc., it wins us brownie points in India. People say, oh, you're shouting back at the US. But that's neither here nor there. The real issue is what is good for us. And what is good for us is, let's listen to our viewpoints and then decide what our pathway forward is. Let's not just import something from somewhere and say that's going to be good. But let's also not just reject it because it comes from elsewhere, because it's not invented here. And that confidence, in a sense, we got to jettison the colonial past. We got to jettison this view that we're always, look, I've worked in Western organizations. I was in the IMF, and I've fought against this old view, oh, the West knows. And I've tried to say, we need to have a view which is right. And sometimes those old views are wrong. I've fought battles against the Federal Reserve for years and years, saying that they have the wrong view on monetary policy. But at the same time, I think it shouldn't be knee-jerk. It shouldn't be because they're saying it, they're wrong. You have to have a sense of why they're wrong and show them that they're wrong. And this is where I think we need to develop our own capabilities. India, and I hope we do it in the G20 presidency, we have to offer our agenda. Here is our view for growth. Here is how it is different. We should stop constantly just rejecting that agenda without offering a plan of our own. And I hope this presidency of the G20, we will do that. Here is our agenda for sustainable world growth, right? Instead of saying, you're wrong, you have polluted the world, you have done all that. It's one world we live in. What is our plan? And how is our plan going to take the world forward? So we need more thinking. That's why people like you come in. You have to be the people who provide the ideas to the world from India. Here are our ideas. Here's how they're different, here's how they're better. They will certainly come from an Indian perspective. They may be biased towards India, but at least it offers us an alternative rather than just rejecting what the West says and says, we don't buy into that. What was the other question?
I don't know, maybe you want to pass the population control law question, but changes in the educational system, like if you want to.
Well, I think we have a lot of really top quality educational institutions. Where we need much more change is in primary and secondary education to improve the quality of education that kids, especially from a poorer section, from rural areas, the kind of education they get. In a sense, the education system is a big equalizer. And if we can improve that quality at lower levels, the lower levels hold you back. If you've been through a poor primary school, you're going to have a miserable secondary school education. And if you even pass that, you're going to have an awful college education. So you need to improve the quality right from the bottom. And that means even before you get into school. When you're in your early, my colleague Jim Heckman, a Nobel laureate in the 80s, in the early 90s, basically says by age 5 you're done. You're set for life. If you had terrible food, if you had bad values injected into you by your parents, you're finished, age 5. I think he's being a little sort of over dramatic, but it does suggest that early capabilities are very, very important. Whether you have good nutrition, whether you get the right vaccines against disease, whether you've even learned basic value systems. Those are very important, and we should do our best to get that to everyone.
So can I add, actually he's not exaggerating, this is stuff that I work on, and there's a lot of medical literature which says that the child's nutritional map is set before the age of 5, which is why it's important to give them eggs in Anganwadis, which the government is resisting to terminate. Sorry.
That's the wonder. We always have experts who know. So, absolutely.
Sorry, I never miss eggs in the
I agree entirely with you, so I will just withdraw my exaggerate to whatever comment I made about it.
Go ahead, man. Okay, so then there's these questions about India's trajectory since 2014 and the changes in Indian democracy, demonetization, independence of the RBI, in case you want to take it.
So, on demonetization I've spoken before. I think I was asked about whether we should go for it. I basically tried to persuade the government it was a bad idea. I was not required to make a decision because we were just, in a sense, preparing for a possibility. And we certainly started, I didn't want to be in the position that we had a point when demonetization was decided and we had no money. I knew that it would take a long, long time to print the money that we needed to make sure it didn't kill the economy. And so we started the printing of the money that would be needed if there was a decision. If there wasn't, this would just be new money that was infused into it while the old notes were withdrawn. So we were preparing. We never reached the full preparation that we needed, and that was why we had a huge shortage of cash as we did the demonetization. That's an example of a decision I think could have been, unfortunately, the nature of demonetization means it has to be a small group of people who know, but it could have been much better debated and thought out, and it was not.
Then there's a bunch of questions on the global recession and how it might affect India, and what are your views on what we might do?
Well, we're not immune to global forces, right? And the latest import-export numbers suggest that our imports have been falling. That suggests weakness in the domestic economy, but our exports have also been not doing well. So we are going to be affected by ebbs and flows of the global economy. Now, that said, I think the global economy, everybody's been predicting recession, but it hasn't happened. And in fact, the latest numbers from the US are that it is still reasonably strong. Just a tidbit for those of you who are interested in economics. The last jobs numbers in the US said there were 500,000 plus jobs that were being created, right? It actually is not 500,000 jobs that were created in the US. In January, the US lost 2.5 million jobs. However, the jobs number that is put out is a seasonally adjusted job number. So typically